Why most struggle to change behaviors? Because they focus mostly on change instead of trying to dissolve them. So let me share with you today how to be able to start making changes faster, but without focusing on changing. I know it sounds so weird, but I'm going to explain this in a second. So welcome back to another episode of Rapid Subconscious Reprogramming. If you're watching live, if you can type hashtag live. If you're watching replay, hashtag replay, that would be great. So we know you're there. If you have any questions, comments, great. The more you engage with this, more people get to see it. I'm doing this for free to share as much as I can. I want to help people start making changes in their life. But first of all, we need to understand that what we resist persists. And this is not said by me. A lot of people around the world, gurus, are saying this. And this, yes, I am, with them, that whatever we're resisting is going to persist. So when we focus on changing a behavior like smoking, procrastination, whatever it is that we're struggling with, when we focus on that behavior to change it, what we're actually doing is we're feeding it normally in most cases, and it's becoming stronger. So look at this. Hasn't it happened before in the past that you were procrastinating and you started beating yourself up, you started judging yourself, you kind of started focusing on changing procrastination from a place of authoritarianism, right? And you were not able to change it. Type a yes in the chat if this has happened to you, where you were looking to change something like procrastination or any other things, and you were not able to do it, right? And I see that over and over again. I've been studying the mind for 15 years and worked with thousands of people that have focused mainly on overcoming procrastination, overcoming perfectionism, stop being a people pleaser, stop smoking, stop eating, stop whatever, and they haven't been able to. So let me share with you a little bit more on how to actually start changing. So as I said, first of all, stop trying to change. The first step is to try to understand. The idea is to try to understand why you're having the behavior that you're having. So what does that mean? If I'm procrastinating, why am I procrastinating? Understanding that there's a part of me, a part of the mind that is trying to protect me from something deeper. So imagine this. Imagine that I have to do my taxes and I'm not doing it. Maybe a part of me is scared because if I do my taxes, now I'm going to find out that I have to pay X amount of money to the government and I'm not going to be happy. So the mind is trying to protect me in that situation, right? Although I need to do it, although I'm going to have bigger consequences if I not do the taxes, the mind is thinking short term, and short term is if I find out that I now owe $2,000, $5,000, $10,000, whatever to the government, I'm going to feel so crappy that I don't want to be there. So the mind is trying to protect you from that. That's how it works. So instead of focusing on pushing harder to try to overcome procrastination, understand that there's a mechanism inside of you that when things don't go the way you want, you tend to beat yourself up. That is one of the main reasons why we fall many times into perfectionism, procrastination. Perfectionism, a way to, do it perfect, because if we don't do it perfect, we're not going to feel loved and accepted normally by ourselves, right? Procrastination, again, if I do something and it doesn't go well, I'm going to beat myself up. So I want to avoid that. So as I always say, there are parts of us in the mind. In psychology, it's called personalities. It's like there's different parts of Tommy, different Tommies acting in different ways. And you might say, but that sounds crazy. Like there's another Tommy pulling in another direction. Think about this. When you say, I'm going to go do this, and then you don't end up doing it, what do you think happened? If there's one mind, one, in a way, you, quote unquote, right? Why are you doing something different? Because you should be doing what you say you were going to do. So what I'm trying to prove here is that, yes, there are different parts of you pulling in different directions. So I say, I want to go there. And then a part of me says, wait, Tommy, if you try to go there and you don't get the results, you're going to beat yourself up. So let's do something different, or pull backwards or sideways. And we try to go along our life, like this, and start going straight. Hey, Kim, thank you for being here. So the idea is to be able to understand how the mind works. Don't try to fight it. If my hand is hurting, would I grab a hammer and start, hitting it harder or stabbing my hand because it's hurting? Normally, most people wouldn't do that. I would try to understand, okay, what's going on? I would try to go to a doctor. Maybe I get an x-ray and I see that I have a broken bone. And if I started beating it up, I would have made it even worse. So yes, look what I just said. You might say, but Tommy, it's not the same. Yes, it is the same, because you need to understand that many of the centers of the mind, of the brain, that perceive physical pain, when I pinch my, index finger here, I can feel the pain up here, right? I feel it here, but it's a communication over here. Similar centers can perceive emotional or mental pain. So what happens, right? The mind is trying to protect you again. So when we start understanding how the mind works, it makes it easier to start making changes. Because again, if I'm protecting myself from doing something and not getting the results, I'm going to feel physical pain in here that is emotional, mental, but it's still pain in the mind. The mind is going to create behaviors to protect me. Hence, procrastination. Procrastination is a protective mechanism. Perfectionism is a protective mechanism. OCD, control, protective mechanism. ADH could be a result of the mind not wanting to be here and now, and it's all spaced out. I used to have ADHD tendencies. I couldn't sit still. I couldn't be still. My mind was all over the place. I couldn't even communicate correctly. When I started doing this work, I was able to sit down and meditate for 2 hours, no problem. I started being able to be much more focused, even hyper-focused. Why? Because in my case, I'm not saying everybody's the same, don't get me wrong, but in my case, my ADHD was keeping me safe from being here and now, because here and now created a lot of pain in the mind, physical, quote unquote, pain. So mind found ways to keep me busy, not to feel the pain. So that is to understand the mind. Most people out there don't understand the mind. Seriously, as I have spoken before, I love Edgar Tolle and all what he speaks about living in the now. But the way what he teaches about how the mind works and the negative emotions, to just, that's not you, kick them away, ignore them, let them pass. I don't like that part. I'm not saying to stop for every mental thought, every negative emotion, but when it's moving us, when it's bothering us, it means that we need to stop and pay attention. Because if my kid walks into this room and says, "Dad, I'm sad," I would stop and listen to him. I would try to understand him, why he's feeling sad. I wouldn't shut him down. So as I wouldn't do that to him, I would also wouldn't do that to me. So what I'm trying to recommend here is you stop listening to a lot of people out there that are teaching you old school on how the mind works and how to start making changes. And instead of focusing on making a change, try to understand what's going on in the mind. Why are you doing what you're doing? Why you are smoking? I might say, oh, because I like it, because it reduces the stress and the anxiety. Yes, that is true, but that's not the main reason. Maybe you started smoking as a kid because you wanted to belong, because you had pain of not belonging. Maybe you felt lonely and you smoked to feel less lonely. So when we start understanding again how the mind works, we're able to say, okay, there's a part of me that is feeling lonely. So instead of pushing it away, I need to make it feel loved and acceptance. It needs to feel accompanied. Instead of denying, repressing my negatives, right? When I feel lonely, I need to bring presence to the part of me that is feeling lonely. So to stop feeling lonely, it's not about filling my calendar with things to do. It's about bringing presence to the part of me that is feeling lonely understanding why it's feeling lonely, what could have happened during childhood. Remember, the right lobe can be reliving a past memory as if it were happening today. The right lobe can be reliving a memory as if it were happening today. So for the mind, it could be living a moment in your childhood where you felt lonely. Maybe you were left behind at school. Maybe you were left behind at home. Maybe your parents were not there for you when you needed them and you felt lonely. So instead of just denying it because the mind is replaying a moment and it thinks that it's happening right now and it's feeling the loneliness, instead of fighting it, understand it, support it. When we start really understanding the mind, things start dissolving. If I feel lonely and I start bringing presence to the part of me feeling lonely, I'm going to feel less lonely. If I'm smoking because I felt lonely, because I want to be part of a gang or whatever. When I bring presence, when I bring love and acceptance, that behavior starts dissolving. Yes, it works like that because remember, the mind is trying to protect you. So it creates behaviors to protect you. So protect you from what? Normally, the bottom line is the mind is trying to protect you from not feeling that, it's trying to protect you from the feeling of the lack of love and acceptance. So again, if a part of me felt judged and criticized when things didn't go my way, I might create this protective mechanism of procrastination to protect myself from being judged or criticized. And you might say, but Tommy, you're still being judged and criticized because you're not doing what you need to do. Yes, but the fear of doing and not getting the expected results and beating yourself up is much higher than the beating yourself up for not doing. Seriously. Because if I try and I don't get results, the pain is going to be much bigger than the pain if I don't try. That's how the mind works. So when you understand better the mind, it's much easier to start making changes, but by dissolving a behavior, not by changing a behavior. Because again, if my hand is broken and I put a cast on, I don't move it anymore, right? Forever, I solve the problem temporarily, but it's not the best way. So instead, I would try to see what's going on and try to change it in a different way. So again, if I'm procrastinating because I'm scared of being judged and criticized if I don't get the result that I want and feeling like a failure, I need to start changing the parts of me that have attached that being a failure is that failing is like being a failure. Because the truth is I can fail, but that doesn't mean I'm a failure. If you look at Michael Jordan, if you look at Thomas Edison, if you look at all the people that have done changes in the world, their action have failed along the journey. Hey, Romana, thank you for stopping by. We got Susan here. Thank you for being here. So when we understand that, the woman that wrote Harry Potter, she was rejected by I don't know how many different places that didn't want to get her book out there into the market. So many people, their actions failed temporarily and they didn't take it as final failure. They kept on going. And I've seen that in my life too. Although many of my actions failed, I kept on going, and I kept on going. And I was able to start seeing results because I kept on going. Right now, we're launching another business, right? And we're getting out there, sending emails, contacting people. And so far, we have zero people interested in what we're doing. That means that I need to stop? No, I need to keep going. It means just that I haven't reached out to enough people. I haven't been able to talk to enough people to get people interested in this, what we're doing. So instead of just shutting down like a failure, oh, nobody's answering the emails, I'm sent already, 2,000 emails and I didn't get any response. That's normal because I'm doing cold messages in that case. And it has to do with nothing to do with coaching, something different that we're starting. So we need to understand that that is not a failure. It just means that the actions that we've taken so far have failed, but I need to keep going, maybe tweaking the messages, tweaking the script, whatever, to see that if eventually I can start getting some responses. But if I take that as a failure, that I failed, I'm going to go into shutdown mode and I'm going to stop doing what I need to do. So it's important to understand again how the mind works. If I want to fix a car, I need to understand how a motor works, how a car works. If Tommy, wants to fix a car, I'm not going to be able to fix it because I have no idea how it works. So when we start understanding these things, it's going to make it easier to start dissolving behaviors, get rid of things that we're trying to get rid for years. But instead of focusing on change, I focus on understanding, supporting, going deeper to really understand what's going on. And this is what I tell everyone, to be able to make changes in our life that is more dissolving things in our life behaviors, we need to work on understanding and love. We got understanding on one side and we have love on the other. As we understand something or we come out of love, right? We understand something. As we understanding, we're able to love ourselves deeper. When we love ourselves deeper, we're able to understand more and more ourselves. So when you start beating up the inner critic, when you start beating yourself up for procrastinating, when you start judging or criticizing yourself for whatever, unfortunately, you are going to create, in most cases, more of that. So I'm not saying this is easy, but the more you focus on change, the less you're going to be able to change. As I said before at the beginning, the more you resist, the more it persists. So it's more into understanding, loving, and accepting that is going to bring a change through dissolving behaviors and creating new ones than fighting the behaviors that you have. Stop fighting and start loving. And I promise you, as you practice that love and understanding, things can start changing. Let me see here, Rohanna, why is it so hard for some of us to fail so we rather don't do? Because Romana, when you failed as a little girl, you were judged, criticized, rejected, and that created so much pain that you don't want to go through that again. So a lot of people out there, a lot of people have gone through tremendous pain when they failed, that they associated that failure is the worst thing that could happen to them. So now the mind is protecting them from that. They couldn't perceive that there is a possibility of not failing, or failing being just a stepping stone. You've attached something really negative to failure. So now the mind is protecting you from failing. Does that make sense? Other people have seen that failure could be a stepping stone, that you could do something wrong. I'm trying to teach that to my kids, that failing is part of the process. So if something goes bad, that they can try it again and keep going and learning through the process. So as I'm starting to I'm teaching that to my kids, they're starting to learn that. It might maybe help them in the future, that whenever something doesn't go their way, they might be able to adapt, learn, and grow from it and keep going instead of just quitting. A lot of people have gone through a lot of pain growing up that they just want to quit. And that's why if you see it, a lot of people there in the world, they're stuck, they're struggling, and there's a very few percentage compared that are having a successful life, business, whatever it is. Some, because they need that to try to feel good enough. Don't get me wrong. A lot of people out there are valuing themselves to the results that they get. And that is still not good either, because depending on the results, they feel valued, accepted, and recognized. The idea is to be able to love and accept ourselves no matter what. And I'm not saying it's easy, but that's the idea, because sometimes we're going to get what we want and sometimes we're not going to get what we want or what we think we want. So we've got to be very careful, because now we start confusing about getting whatever we want because that's what we're supposed to get. And sometimes we're not supposed to get some things. I believe we're spiritual beings that we're learning, and the universe sometimes might get us what we want and sometimes it might not, because there might be something that we need to learn from that. So I hope that makes sense. Let me know, Romana, if that answered your question. Thank you very much for watching. Thank you, Kim. Thank you, Romana. Thank you, Susan. Thank you, Suzanne. And I'll see you next time. Have a great week. I hope you enjoyed this. More things to come to share, to help people out there start being able to make changes while not focusing on the change.